they call the rising sun.
At number 1, and this is without a doubt the biggest surprise reveal of THQ Nordic's showcase earlier this month, and I've said it before here, only once, we have Alone in the Dark, apparently as a reimagined version of the first 3 games in the original series that were released first almost 30 years ago, and now, well, being built from the ground up. Check it out. These games set to be released early to mid 2023, and just in case you have no clue what's going on here, this is a series of survival cult classic, mainly puzzle horror games.
Have you ever talked to a doctor about your condition?
This is madness!
Are you crazy? Fall on your knees, wear the mask, praise his name!
Welcome to the madhouse, Detective.
Due to your unfortunate circumstances, you have been incarcerated here, on the Bastard Moon.
Now, coming up behind that we have Luna Abyss, actually from no more than a few days ago, a narrative-driven action-adventure and a first-person shooter mainly with horror game elements, basically revolving around the discovery of this vast, derelict colony under the depth of some moon. Developers of which, for the game said, and I quote, "If you do fancy some bullet hell shooter with some cosmic horror thrown into the mix, this is probably the one for you. The game's on its way to PCs in the next generation of consoles only and due out mid to late 2023.
Undesirable things. My best advice? Try not to die. Oh, and I almost forgot to introduce myself. My name is Aylin, and I'll be watching you.
At number 3, by publishers Raw Fury and the pretty good folks at Lunar Software from a very long time ago, something here called Routine, which is a first-person science fiction-based horror game that was pretty much first announced more than a decade ago. In terms of story, we'll sit on this abandoned lunar base, which is designed around an 80s vision of the future. Well, here, currently the game has no release date nor a window, and only rumored to be released by the end of 2023.
It's been a long time.
Moving on, we've got once again Chant, The Chant, which was announced precisely a year ago to this day, and now revealed once again with a new trailer. The game is releasing on both generations of consoles in addition to PCs, November 3, not October anymore. And what we have here, in case you're wondering, is actually described by its developers as a psychedelic action horror game, what in terms of core gameplay, however, works as a third-person adventure and an action game. Check it out.
Tyler's family used to run a commune in the 70s.
I'm sure you have many questions. But isn't that how our spiritual journey begins?
Stop blaming me!
Kim, don't break the circle.
No!
Damn it!
Alright, at number 5, well, some of you might remember this one from last year, but just in case. See, one of the veterans who previously worked on The Last of Us, and another veteran who did work on Red Dead Redemption 2, will technically have been teaming up and developing a third-person thriller game pretty much set on Mars. A game called Fort Solis. Now, Fort Solis by the two-man developers is described as a space horror game taking clues from Dead Space and the movie Moon, which is a great movie by the way. This one's due out possibly mid-2023 and for PCs only.
Something's going on here.
Pray to him, so you can prosper.
Moving on, we have once again by an indie developer, y'all, another first-person survival horror game here called The Ninth Carnal, I would assume. A psychological horror game I've been led to believe, and a stealth-based game with a pretty good focus on story. The game's story-rich, according to Steam. Well, now, this is obviously some in-game footage, and it came our way only hours ago. That's it, Ninth Carnal, or Charnels, releasing for PCs only on Steam and by the end of 2022. Moving on once again, we've got Resident Evil 4 Remake, and as previously mentioned, with a release date of March 24, 2023. Now, this remake is gonna be very different from the original game, as you can tell, and not only visually, but also in terms of just gameplay, story, content, and literally just a pretty brand new game, rather than a remake. But at the same time, as Capcom promised, faithful to the original as much as they could. Resident Evil 4 is also the first third-person over-the-shoulder remake since 2002. Check it out.
Get what happened that night. The pain. Even for a second.
A grisly nightmare of macabre perception. Greetings. I'm your host, Doug Bradley, and I invite you to join me as we explore Scorn's mesmerizing labyrinth of odd forms and somber tapestries. You awake.
At number 8, we have the old Scorn, which is once again slated for release October 21st, 2022, and for PCs and Xbox consoles only, which is basically a Microsoft exclusive, after being in development for like probably 20 years now. Now, for those of you who did just arrive on planet Earth from, I don't know, whatever, Scorn is a first-person survival horror game in which you do have this biochemical weapon, and you get to navigate your way and eventually out of this labyrinth on a different planet. The fine folks at the company just came up with a new trailer too.
Great attention to detail. Everything is focused on building a specific atmosphere. From a unique organic ecosystem to an unsettling soundscape created by Ethek and Lust Maud. Scorn has no dialogue, so most of the storytelling comes from the environment. Discovering the ever-present symbiotic relationships and how things are connected equips you with the tools to progress. While there is shooting within the game, Scorn is not a shooter. Every encounter must be carefully considered. A wrong choice could be deadly. I hope you've enjoyed this glimpse into the twisted world of Scorn. The team at Ebb Software can't wait for you to uncover the secrets of this unique world as you experience Scorn firsthand this October.
It's been here for a while.
See, earlier July this year, 1C Entertainment did, once again, unveil, well, first off, something called the Fold Ingression, which, first of all, just a brand new IP, and then later on what they described to be a thriller, adventure, maybe with some horror elements, so to speak. Technically, this is how the game really works, this is actual gameplay, and apparently it places players in the shoes of some Norwegian temp exterminator dude. We'll check it out. The game's releasing later for PCs only, and about in a few months, we hear.
Senses may drown.
Moving on, we have something called Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon, basically an open world, role-playing, and a quest-based game. And well, you might be wondering, wasn't this supposed to be a horror game list? And yes, it is, and it isn't. See, the game's pretty much, we hear something in the same vein as Bloodborne, and with a heavy focus on horror elements, like dark stories of medieval times, and it's got some sort of a countdown, so basically you get to hurry and end the game before something terrible happens, which is where the horror element comes in. Well, anyway, this is what the developers came up with. The game is coming to PCs only and probably early next year.
Where's the black box?
Currently heading to mission site Site 74, Pony Station. We'll arrive in about 3 minutes.
At number 11, and actually since the Steam Game Fest from earlier this year, well, where we got to get hands on around 1,000 free gameplay demos, well, we have here ever since something I'm new to myself, actually, called SCP Secret Files, which is apparently, I've read, the latest game based on the SCP Foundation wiki that are just mainly a collection of horror-based stories, and so this is also a story-driven, atmospheric horror game. Check it out, this one's set to be coming to PCs only, and by the end of 2022.
Try and focus. What really happened?
I brought it back. It brought the black box home.
Don't lie to us. You never brought it.
Now, EA Games, on the other hand, in case you missed out on the news, did announce the Dead Space remake will now arrive on January 27th next year, and that the game will release exclusively on the next generation of consoles and PCs. Well, this time around also on the PlayStation 5. That it won't necessarily be a straight-up remake either, like there's gameplay changes and new content added, the level design is being overhauled, all the voices are re-recorded in case you didn't know, and this is pretty much how the game will eventually look like.
Place gives me the creeps.
Puppeteers, on the other hand, which is actually the first time getting a mention in one of our lists, as a first-person co-op based horror game and actually an action-oriented one. Technically, you could play this one with up to 4 other players, and actually this game has been around on Steam through a demo for quite a while now. So do make sure to check that out if you're a fan of atmospheric gameplay or just want some good old horror experience. Check it out, the full game is releasing October 31st this year. Coming up behind that thing, we have here another thing called SE-INSCREVA, a brand new H.P. Lovecraft-inspired horror game apparently, whose developers describe it as a 4th-person co-op survival game as well. Not really much to talk about with this one, to be quite frank, except the gameplay trailer is something to behold, and just a variety of tentacle monsters you get to see here is pretty dope. This one's coming to PCs only, I believe through Epic Games Store, and possibly by the end of 2022.
Hopes and expectations.
For those of you who've been waiting since December last year, see, Remedy Entertainment's Alan Wake 2 just received a bit of an update. Apparently, the game is releasing April 2023 and for the next generation of consoles and PCs only. This will be a less of an action-oriented game this time around, or so we hear, and more of a cinematic sort of experience, and, well, just in case you're wondering, picking up exactly where the story left off after the first game.
This story is a monster.
Jesus, please.
Coming up behind that, we have Mirror's Forge, and I've mentioned this one before, a first-person psychological survival horror game announced about a month ago, and a pretty good game if I say so myself, based on the demo that came around earlier. I mean, game's got a legit visual style, it's promising, got lots of puzzles and some good atmosphere, so to speak. Not really sure if the story is on point though, but check it out. This one's coming to PCs only, and it's full in about a few months we hear.
I'll find you, Joe. I'll find you.
At number 17, well, we've got the old Scare Ritual from earlier this year, possibly one of the most hyped horror games in the making in case you're new to, though a round-based co-op first-person shooter, and also, yes, the spiritual successor to Made of Scare. The game is coming to pretty much all consoles and PCs later this year. This is actual in-game footage, and we also just got a new trailer for it as well. Check it out.
Survive on this island.
And last but not least, we have here, and maybe not that new either, something called Outbreak Island, which is a survival game with detective elements. It says where you're to investigate the mysteries of an island and try to stay alive at any cost, using only a camera and some weapons you get to make through stuff you get to pick up on the ground. And in terms of story, well, apparently there's been some sort of an experiment gone wrong that has driven the island's population into maniacs. Anyway, check it out, the game is partially an open world and there's also hints of zombies as well. Yeah.